Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video about the upcoming new moon in Virgo that will happen on September 30th in the evening. This new moon is going to be in Hasta Nakshatra, and so, you know, the sun and moon are coming together here in Virgo. Virgo is the sign of, it's actually ruled by Mercury, and it's the feminine, earthy, reflective quality of Mercury. And it shows where we are managing our inner mind and psychology and life. So Mercury is very skilled and flexible and curious, and noticing every little detail and how one detail is different from another, and that kind of skill and precision that comes when we recognize how things are different, and we bring in this sort of distinction between different words that are said, or different projects, or different ideas, sometimes different people, and we can get kind of grouchy and frustrated and nitpicky. These are all Virgo possibilities. So the sun has been in Virgo for a couple weeks, approximately, and when the sun and moon come together, it starts that new cycle. So we're going to have this Mercury ruled new moon, and so from there, for the next 30 days, it'll be a time to really get more skill and more benefit from our discrimination and using our rational mind. The truth is, we don't really use our brain very often. When I say our brain, I mean our intelligence, our intellect. That's what Mercury is. It's actually the intellect. And we all think we're smart and that we're using our brain, and we hardly ever are. We use our brain, quote, our intellect, to explain our feelings to ourselves and explain why we did something that was really not very intelligent at all. If we actually used our brain and used our intellect in a skillful way, we would do the things that we know are right and that we know are correct. That's what the intellect is for. But we don't usually use it that way. We use it to go back and, I can't remember the word, it's not conflate, it's to rationalize what we've just done. That's how we generally use our intellect internally. We just kind of go back and say, oh, well, that's why I did that, because la da da da. And that's not why we did pretty much anything. We did something because we felt like it. No real rationale. But that doesn't sound very smart, so we develop some complicated explanation about why we do things. We see this, right? When we know people, we all have our story. So pay attention to that story and get really clear and sensible and rational about it, and try to change some things. So Mercury is actually exalted in Virgo because it's where we are aware of these painful truths. So it might not be such a pleasant truth that you're facing right now about these things, about how unintelligent you are in certain areas of life, right? So be willing to look at that now, and if you're not, then you may find where you make mistakes that maybe are somewhat costly. One of the most important ways that these things arrive in our life is in our lifestyle choices. This is why Virgo is also related to things like our food. Again, these are all details of our life. Like, for example, think of someone who smokes all the time, right? And you're like, why don't you stop smoking? Don't you know that's bad for you? Well, I just pressure and I'll lose weight, or I don't know, I just can't stop smoking. I don't know, it's just, there's some idea, it's just they're not using their brain. They're not thinking clearly. And, at some point maybe they'll be scared straight enough to stop doing it and actually start using their brain in this area of life. And again, this is what Virgo is. The consequences eventually catch up to us. As I say, that's why a good example is something like food. We know we're not eating the right food. We know we're not doing the right routines. We eat more food than we should. We maybe drink more coffee. We don't get as much sleep as we should. We know all this, and we just kind of keep going because it doesn't kill us, because our body is so resilient. But we don't have the energy level we wish we did. We're, And we know that if we did these things, it would be better, but we have some rational explanation, or some rationale for it. Well, I'm getting a little older, that's why, and I get this, and I have that. And eventually, though, if it gets really serious and severe, we will change. If we get really, really sick, let's say, or something really crashes our world, it's those things that wake us up, and then we start to get really smart, finally, and doing things differently. So this is a big thing for this next 30 days, to look at those things in your life and look at things that you're not doing correctly, where you're not being intelligent, where you're not using your brain, and try to make adjustments. That's what Virgo does. We actually make adjustments, and we're willing to go through the stress and the difficulty of it. This is why Virgo is a tamasic sign. Things don't feel so good there often, but we're willing to do that because we know it's the best thing to do. And we're willing to go through that unpleasantness in order to do what we know is right. So there will be some benefit while this is happening. Moon and Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are joined. So Jupiter is very close to the Sun, what's called combust. So we have a very strong combust Jupiter right now. It's on the other side of the Earth from the Sun. Other side of the Sun from the Earth, sorry. My little binary dyslexia there. So there's a lot of Jupiter energy really getting blasted into our life, but it's getting purified. So notice how much pure teaching is in your life right now. Pure teachings are very good to have. So, when you have a really good teacher and you're drinking from a really pure source of knowledge and wisdom, there's a lot that can benefit your life. So that's what we are aware of now, or the lack of that thing in our life. But now, especially with this new moon joined this combust Jupiter, it's a time to really get good teachings and pure teachings in your life and really put those teachings into practice. We also have Venus is in Libra, which is quite good for our relationship partners and, wanting to be, treated a certain way, and also able to extend courtesy and, equanimity and equality to another. We also have Rahu Mercury in Leo. Of course, Mercury is the ruler of that new moon, and it's in Leo, where our relationship with details and the story is kind of fiery right now. We can be kind of maybe even a little triggered if we're not careful. And Saturn is still in Scorpio, where it's been since the end of 2014. Is that right? Yeah. Time is going slow. I think September 2014. And and Mars is in Sagittarius, where we're fighting for our principles a lot more now, rather than fighting to maintain the status quo or fighting to protect our fears and stresses like we were doing when Mars and Saturn were in Scorpio. So now that Mars has moved out of Scorpio, it's in Sagittarius, where we're fighting for a higher purpose and higher principles. So this new moon is in a Hasta Nakshatra. Hasta literally means the hand, and it's the hand that, it's an open hand. It's a hand where there's spaciousness and there's a lack of attachment. So you don't need to have so much attachment to the fruits of your efforts, but it's where we put forth the effort, but we also understand that God's grace makes all actions complete. And so as to not, define ourselves by our actions, but instead, allow our karma and our actions to be in service to a higher power. This is really embodied by Hasta Nakshatra, but it's a great nakshatra for manifestation, and it's related to the Gayatri mantra. So that's definitely a very powerful mantra to chant at this time. And this is also a special, once the moon becomes new, it's good for, it's the beginning of what's called Navratri, which is the 9-day celebration of the Divine Mother. That'll start on Saturday and be for 10 days. the 9 days of the Divine Mother, and then the 10th day of the Vijayadashami, where we celebrate the victory of the Mother. So that's also happening now. Get ready to celebrate the Divine Mother and divine creation in all its forms. So if you want to know how this Virgo cycle and this Divine Mother cycle and all of that relates to you, you can join my website, my member site, only 50 cents, and see how this relates to your sign. And it's very important, that we get our mind and our intellect strong, and it's going to affect each of the signs, each of the 12 signs differently. So if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and register for that as well.